You are Locked On Texas Tech, your daily podcast on the Texas Tech Red Raiders, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
We're going to start this thing off right. Raider! Everything runs through Lubbock.
Thanks for joining us on Locked On Texas Tech once again on the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. Always appreciate being your first listen on YouTube or anywhere you get podcasts. And it's here. It is game day in the great state as the Red Raiders and Rebels of Ole Miss ready to square off coming up in the Texas Bowl from Houston. And with Chris Level, I'm Casey Cowan getting you set for kickoff. Chris is coming to you from the Dirty Third. I'm coming to you from Dolores Hidalgo, Mexico. You're going to have to Google that one more than likely. But we have connected here to get ready for Red Raider football. And Chris, glad to be back with you again, man. Hope you enjoyed the holidays. And I was going to say I hope you enjoyed a little time off, but I know it's been a busy schedule as we've had some hoops going down this week, but of course getting ready for Texas Tech football. And, man, it's a long wait, I know, for the team and everybody involved to finally get here.
Yeah, you know, when those bowls get announced, you feel like it's forever before that game is going to be played. And in some ways, though, it's like it feels like it just sneaks up on you, and it just happens really quick with all the holidays and other things going on. But yeah, I think they've had about 14 total practices since this game was this matchup was announced. The team has been here since Christmas Eve. They immediately got here and practiced that day and practiced on Christmas Day. Kind of, wound down a bit as the game is approached and kind of got into their normal, Friday, Saturday routine, which would be Tuesday. And then today, obviously Wednesday, which would be a normal Saturday for them. But yeah, I just, and everybody, I've talked to a bunch of Ole Miss fans down here. It's like nobody really knows who's playing for either team because you've had some portal situations. You've got, this and that. It's just been kind of a bizarre last several weeks because of just the state of college football. But I think for the most part, most of their guys, other than the ones that have hit the portal, things like that. So they'll be missing some defensive depth for sure. That's where tonight they'll be a bit shorthanded because there's some defensive guys that would have played in this game that are they're not on the team anymore and all that. But no, it should be fun, man. I'm excited about it, seeing how they compete, and you got a lot of momentum going right now.
Yeah, no question. You really want to continue that as you wound up the regular season with 3 wins in a row. And we all know, regardless of the way you finish the regular season, a big bowl win can really propel you into the offseason with a ton of momentum. So hoping that is going to be the case tonight. I'm glad you touched on the roster because I actually felt like Texas Tech, at least to my understanding, seemed to be in a fairly good position as far as defectors or things like that for whatever reason going into the bowl game. But you nailed it, man. It's a totally different conversation you have now when you talk about personnel, who's going to be there, who's opting out, who's going to the transfer portal, who's training for the National Football League. There's all kinds of reasons that they could go with, but this is kind of a new experience this time of year.
Yeah, it is. And when you look at it, you look at it from this standpoint. This is going to be a game you play tonight against one of the top rushing offenses in the entire country without Tyree Wilson, Phillip Bliddy, Reggie Pearson, who is a great run support safety. His issues are more he struggles in coverage, but in run support, it's exactly what you're looking for. Kobe Minor would have played a ton in this game. So there's 4 either really good players or depth pieces that you'll be missing. And so, you're going to really have to hope that your main group stays intact because there's just not a lot of proven depth there. And there's a few other guys that have kind of bailed out or just not playing. I think Blankenbaker, he was a backup DB. I'm not even sure if he's even here on this trip. And he was one of the grad transfers from, I think, Wyoming. He would have provided some depth. So anyway, you just kind of go into this thing a bit thin on that side of the ball. And again, it's going to be, what I guess I'm expecting tonight, just to cut to the chase, I get the sense this could be kind of, I guess, closer to a shootout than not, if that makes sense. I think this is a really good offense that you're facing. I think the Red Raiders are very healthy and in tune on offense, minus Donovan Smith, obviously. But I wouldn't be surprised if this game is played in the 40s, 30s, something like that, with kind of like a back and forth type scenario. Now, I hope I'm wrong. Hopefully, you catch lightning and run away from them. But I wouldn't be surprised at all if this is something that ends up being kind of closer to a shootout.
We'll get to some matchups and some angles on the action in between the lines coming up in just a bit. But before then, Chris, I wanted to ask you this, because this is not a new experience. This has always been a part of bowl season. Is Texas Tech or Ole Miss the more excited team to be in this game? Do you have any gauge on that just yet? Because it seems like that's always a factor, whether we like it or not.
I can just tell you that, like at the Rodeo Bowl, okay, which was a couple of nights ago, Texas Tech won this contest handily. And I think that that was a scenario to where most people there felt like Texas Tech was easily the most excited group about being at stuff like that. Yeah. And there's been some whispers about Ole Miss, man, don't want to be here, this and that. So we'll see. You won't ultimately know until the game gets here, and that's all that really matters. But I think there's because I know Joey's team is going to be excited about playing hard. And even if they're down 30, for example, they're going to play hard. They're going to empty their bucket. This is what they do. But I think that there's been some examples in games this year where Ole Miss hasn't maybe finished games as strongly as they would have wanted to, or kind of shut it down. And so maybe if you get up early here, I don't know, maybe, and again, that's just reading tea leaves and speculation on my part.
Sure.
But I'm just saying, but I think if you ask me that question, there's been some, whispers, or there's been some suggestion that, maybe you're easily the most excited team about being here and playing this game.
Well, it certainly is a reality that those things impact many bowl games across the country every year. So I hope that Texas Tech, spurred on by the energy of Joey McGuire and the way they finish the season, will be the team that's more excited to be in this game. We will get to some matchups and some views within the game coming up next on Locked On Texas Tech. But first, today's episode brought to you by BetOnline, your number one source for sports betting info, stats, news, and analysis. You can get the latest odds and trends right now for every professional and amateur league out there. Pro football, college bowl season, hoops, World Cup, everything. They got it all at BetOnline. If you're loving sports podcasts, you can even find those at BetOnline as well. Always the fastest and easiest way to get your betting info. So head over to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more with BetOnline, where the game starts. It's Locked On Texas Tech on the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. On YouTube, anywhere you get podcasts, subscribe if you have not already. Thanks for making us your first listen, and we hope you'll make Locked On Sports Today your second listen. Available on the Odyssey app, YouTube, or anywhere you get podcasts. Locked On Sports Today brings you the biggest stories of the day, plus instant reactions, big game recaps, and the take of the day. That's the Locked On Sports Today podcast right here on the Locked On Podcast Network. All right, Chris, between the lines as it pertains to this matchup, I know you've mentioned the ground game for Ole Miss. We've mentioned some personnel not being there for Texas Tech defensively. Can we start with, however, maybe a matchup you like for the Red Raiders? Do you see anything offensively or defensively you do feel like maybe they can take advantage of?
I think on offense,
I think if you're Texas Tech, I think you potentially like some of the matchups against Ole Miss's corners. I think you feel really good about just how healthy Tyler Shough is now, and maybe this is as close to the late August, early September version of him as we're going to get. I think and like we saw toward the end of the regular season, I think his legs are going to have a big play a huge role in whatever happens tonight for Texas Tech. And if he can get into that 50 to 75 yards rushing range, which he routinely did in those final three games, I think that you really like your chances. And I think that'll be something that that we see a lot of, but it's hey, SaRodorick Thompson, coming home. You've got a lot of hometown kids that are going to get a chance to play, and I'm just kind of excited to see the environment and see what it's like. Now, I do think, the Southwest Airlines and all the chaos with the travel world, I wonder if the crowd will be affected at all. I've seen a lot of people going, "Hey, man, we can't make it to the game," these kinds of things. But I do expect a home environment tonight, and I think if the Red Raiders can play well early on offense, then there was a lot of experimentation with their offensive line, leading up to this game. That's been well documented. Caleb Rogers at center, moving Dennis Wilburn to guard, letting Ty Buchanan play some tackle, and Monroe Mills playing some tackle. I mean, just some different things. I don't think let's put it this way. I would be really surprised if you see them roll with any of that tonight.
Gotcha.
Ole Miss's defensive line, their strength is the nose guard, and I don't know if you would be smart if you're putting like a kind of a new center over our, and then having the best Ole Miss defensive lineman right over them. So I would expect it to be somewhat normal compared to how the season goes. But again, that's just speculation on my part. I just think that would be a heck of but I do think they use some of these practices to kind of fiddle around with some things. But so we'll see.
I was really curious whether or not we would see some of that in place along the offensive line. I think I'm relieved, actually, to maybe hear that won't be there quite yet for this game. But maybe we'll expect to see some of that coming up next season. Okay, the other side of the coin, Chris, what is it that maybe is scaring Red Raiders a little bit? Is there something you feel like the Rebels see on film that they're saying, yeah, we're going after that?
Well, I mean, not having Tyree Wilson is a problem. I just think what Ole Miss does on offense, they've got a variety of different run schemes. And I think you talk to people, I've talked to people that cover Ole Miss, and typically their MO in these games is they may identify something or have identified something that they're going to try to pick on and go with a certain style of run, whether it be counters or stretches or whatever it may be, and they may just hammer that from the get-go, or they may what they typically do is they'll show you 4 or 5 different looks, like from a run game standpoint, and then kind of figure out, okay, this is where they're going to struggle to defend this particular scheme. Gotcha. And that part just, when you're a bit thinner on just defense in general, you're without your best, run support, defensive, safety, I guess, if you will, and Reggie Pearson. Not that he's your best. I mean, Muddy Waters is really good there, and you've got some guys that'll really stick their neck in there and tackle and things like that. I just know, the last time we saw Reggie Pearson, he was lighting up, Dylan Gabriel. He was lighting up Eric Gray for Oklahoma. Now he's going to join him and play for the Sooners. It's just a weird deal.
Yeah, they think he's pretty good.
Yeah, exactly. It's a weird deal. But that's the thing that I think probably concerns, Texas Tech, is just that their ability to really hit monster plays via the run game. And the quarterback, Jackson Dart, he's going to use his legs too. And, it's just going to come down to, who handles their business, who's motivated to be there, and who takes care of the ball. I'll tell you where I think the biggest thing for Texas Tech is tonight. Not a lot of people have talked about at all, like statistics. One of the best zone defenses in the country. You routinely, bowed up in the red zone and either forced field goal attempts or got turnovers or just got 4th down stops, whatever it was, and your percentage is pretty good in the red zone. If you can do that tonight, boy, I really like your chances. If you can keep them, to kicking field goals or attempting field goals or even turn them away a few times, where it makes you nervous is if they're hitting you for a 60-yarder here and a 48-yarder here and a those are like if they gash you and really hit those big chunk plays, because they did it to most of the schools in the SEC with those big long runs. It's just kind of the way the team is set up for them, and that's what makes you nervous.
Yeah, I'm thinking immediately about Ames, Iowa. I know the offense stinks, but if you're at the 1-yard line, good grief, how good do you need to be to get in the end zone? And Texas Tech's defense, turning away the Cyclones multiple times, the goal line stands. And yeah, when the field shrinks, getting a little tougher, never a bad thing. You can have all the yards you want between the 20s, and you may still lose the game if you can't get those final important ones in the red zone. All right, appreciate that perspective on both sides of what's going to happen here tonight. We'll see which one maybe plays out and wins the day for either team. Coming up dead ahead on Locked On Texas Tech, let's get to the next step. Regardless of what happens tonight within the game, what's next for Joey McGuire and Red Raider football after year number 1? We'll get to that coming up next on Locked On Texas Tech. Back at it on Locked On Texas Tech on the Locked On Podcast Network. He's Chris Level. I'm Casey Cowan. Thanks for joining us on YouTube or anywhere you get podcasts. Getting ready for the Texas Bowl. It is Red Raiders and Rebels coming up from Houston. We've touched on what might go down between the two on the field tonight, Chris, but I'm kind of having to remind myself as a Tech fan, this is year 1 for Joey McGuire that we've just experienced. There's been so much drama, so much intrigue, so much excitement, some success, obviously, for Tech fans to rally around as well. But I'm also curious about the next step, because I don't even really know if Joey McGuire's feet are wet yet as a Power 5 head coach. What do you see when you kind of gaze off into the immediate future for Texas Tech football beyond the Texas Bowl?
Yeah, Cowan, there's a lot of positive momentum with this program. I think that we've seen the 3-game winning streak to end the season, the regular season, I should say. We'll see what kind of happens tonight. They obviously put together a really, really good recruiting class that national pundits that cover that stuff felt like it was a top 20, 25 kind of class and things like that. I think they've been very deliberate with some of the pieces they've added via the portal. I think so as far as regardless of the result of the game, you start looking to spring football. And I think some of the immediate things is, one, I'm not going to be surprised at all if Texas Tech does something with Joey's contract. That would be very typical and I think normal, and I think he deserves it. I think that I'm also going to keep an eye on your quarterback position right now too. Immediately after this game, I think that you still hear enough out there about Shough and maybe could go to the NFL from NFL circles that I'm not ready to rule that out yet, and that would be something that all plays out fairly quickly. Casey. Yeah. So that's what. And if that happens, it kind of changes the dynamic quite a bit, in that, you'd have to go find another. So there's going to be some, look, Joey's got this program rolling. I think the fans are fired up. I think we've talked about off the field stuff. I think they're recruiting at a high rate. I think there's going to be some expectations with this team. I think Texas Tech will want to see him here for the long haul. I think that he's going to be making decisions for the immediate and for the big picture here at some point with the roster. And I think it's tricky because they have not had a lot of folks that have left, this program. And then there's some people on this team that just can't or haven't factored in yet. Okay. And I don't know if that will change with some of these players, but I think that, we'll see if there's a need for a quarterback there and kind of what I still think they need to address a position or two on defense. But, you've got people like Dennis Wilburn and Nehemiah Martinez that aren't on scholarship either. I don't think. And so, there's only so much room. But and I still, as we look out in the future, I bet you're not going to get that schedule for next year until mid-January. So, those are just kind of the directions that we'll be going after this game is over. But we've got many, many days to talk about all those things as they play out.
Yeah, I think a couple of weeks ago when you and I were talking about Tyler Shough in the National Football League, I just feel personally like some people are sleeping on his immediate opportunity to be in those conversations right now, particularly if he performs really well against Ole Miss, because NFL eyes have already been on him and aware of him. They know what the measurables are. They probably have some idea of what his intangibles are. And the only thing that has not been there for him is obviously availability, as he's gone through these injuries. But given the fact that he did return and had so much success when he did return, I think you could really put a cherry on top for him with a nice performance tonight to suggest that yeah, he may be making a decision that some Tech fans are not expecting, or maybe just not expecting him to have the option to make, because we've seen him so rarely in Lubbock. And I really don't have a rooting interest, I guess. I'd love to have him back in red and black. I'd love to see him succeed and have an opportunity in the National Football League. I think, as a person, most Tech fans have admired, kind of the way that he's handled his time in West Texas with all that he's had to deal with. So he'd be easy to root for in any situation, but that's really interesting. Yeah, it's hard to say you can make up an NFL resume as far as scouting is concerned with one game or 4 games, but I don't know. I kind of feel like there might be something in the wind as well. If he does go perform really well tonight, I'm going to be getting some phone calls from NFL cities. I would have to guess, right?
Well, and they've, I think that there's been a lot of, rumors about him getting a combine invite and things like that. There's no doubt that he's going to have a chance to play in the NFL. Here's the decision the program will ultimately have to make, and that Tyler will have to make. If this is a real option, and again, we're kind of talking out of turn a little bit, but I do think this is going to be a real decision that is something that they're going to have to discuss here in the very, very near future, like as in the days after this game is played tonight.
Yeah.
Do I come back and, if I'm a, say, 3rd or 4th rounder, do I come back and try to be a 1st rounder? Or do I or do I just say, you know what, I'm gonna take it, and so, but then again, I just think to keep both Tyler Shough and Baron Morton here through the spring, if they're both here, if one of them isn't named the starter, or one of them is named the starter, what is the other one? I just think that's going to be a weird dynamic too. So I guess my suspicion is we just have to keep an eye on the quarterback position, because I don't think it's all quite settled yet. And maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it is settled. They'll both be here next year, and they'll both battle it out in the spring and in August and all that stuff. That just seems kind of Pollyanna-ish to me to think like that. But, based on how everybody else's, situation has gone. So we'll see. But man, I'm glad Joey's in charge of this thing, and it should be a lot of fun watching him kind of orchestrate this program going forward.
Yes, and if Tyler Shough is listening, I would tell you, no way you're coming back to try to be a 1st rounder if you've got a 3rd round grade or something like that. No way, given the experience health-wise that he's had. I just can't imagine that. If you're good enough and it has to be the 3rd round that's your entry into the National Football League, well, you're still going to find your way into relevant circles regardless. But, of course, I'm not Tyler Shough, so we'll have to wait and see maybe what he decides. But that would just be my feel on it. Chris, we appreciate the time today, my man, and the insights and perspective as always, dude. Enjoy the season finale and enjoy the Texas Bowl, man. We'll visit on the other side.
And we'll keep enjoying Mexico. Safe travels back stateside, man. When you get back this way, yeah, there you go. But guns up. We'll keep hope alive, and hopefully it's a good one tonight.
Hey, it's all West Texas, baby. Even Dolores Hidalgo, Mexico. Let's roll. I know there's Red Raiders somewhere here. Guns up out there. Everybody making the trip and everybody taking in the Texas Bowl. And we will see you on the other side. For Chris Level, I'm Casey Cowan. Thanks for joining us again on Locked On Texas Tech.